Think about this for just one moment. A 48-year-old man, father of 6 children. Every single morning, he was jumping into ice-cold water, sitting in the sauna, biohacking his body. By every outward measure, he was the picture of perfect health. And then one afternoon, a doctor said 3 words, just 3 words, that shattered his entire world. It is cancer. That man was James Van Der Beek, the face that an entire generation grew up watching on their television screens. The Dawson's Creek star whose name became synonymous with a whole era of American pop culture. But on February 11, 2026, he was gone, taken by colorectal cancer at just 48 years old. And what experts are now revealing in the wake of his death will stop you cold. Because his story is not just the tragedy of one beloved actor. It is a warning shot aimed directly at millions of Americans who have absolutely no idea they are already at risk. This is not a story about fame. This is a story about survival. And what you are about to hear could save your life or the life of someone you love. The morning everything changed. It was the summer of 2023. On a 36-acre ranch outside Austin, Texas, where a river ran through the property and 6 kids ran even wilder, James Van Der Beek was living what most people would consider a perfect life. He and his wife Kimberly had built something genuinely beautiful out there, far from the noise of Los Angeles. He was in great shape. His career was moving forward. His mind was clear. And his body, by his own account, was in the best cardiovascular condition of his life. He was doing cold plunges every morning, sitting in the sauna, tracking his biometrics, doing everything that the wellness world tells you to do when you want to stay ahead of your own biology. But underneath all of that, something was quietly going wrong. It started with something so minor that most people would have dismissed it without a second thought. Small, irregular changes in his bowel movements. The kind of thing you blame on too much coffee, or a change in your diet, or just one of those things your body does from time to time that you make a mental note of and then completely forget about. James initially thought exactly that. He figured it was his coffee intake, or something he ate, but something nagged at him. Some quiet instinct that would not let it go. So he decided to get a colonoscopy. That decision, in hindsight, may have bought him 2.5 more years with the people he loved most. He went in feeling good, confident, even relieved that he was finally checking that box. And then, as he was coming out of anesthesia, still fuzzy, still halfway between sleep and wakefulness, his gastroenterologist leaned in and delivered the words in what James later described as his most pleasant bedside manner. It is cancer. Stage 3 colorectal cancer. The disease had already spread to nearby lymph nodes. It had not yet reached distant organs, which meant it was still treatable. But it required immediate, aggressive intervention. There was no easing into this. No watching and waiting. The fight had already started, and he was already behind. James later told people that he went to bed that night and woke up the next morning unable to believe he hadn't woken up from a bad dream. That is what cancer does to a person. It turns your reality into something that feels like a nightmare you cannot escape, no matter how wide your eyes are open. The boy from the creek. To understand the full weight of what the world lost on February 11th, 2026, you need to go back to the very beginning. Because James Van Der Beek was never supposed to be a star. Not by any conventional measure. He was born on March 8, 1977, in Cheshire, Connecticut. A quiet New England suburb with fewer than 30,000 people, where Friday nights revolved around high school football games, and everyone knew everyone else's business. His mother, Melinda Weber, was a former Broadway dancer and gymnastics studio owner. His father, James William Van Der Beek Sr., was a cellular phone company executive and former professional baseball pitcher. And here is a detail that feels almost too perfect in hindsight. The name Van Der Beek translates from Dutch to mean from the creek. The show that would one day make him a household name? Dawson's Creek. As if the universe had already written the whole thing out decades in advance. Growing up, James was nothing like the magnetic, self-assured Hollywood leading man you might picture when you hear his name today. By his own admission, he was a shy, self-described weird kid who never quite fit in with his peers. He saw the world through a different lens than most of the people around him. And on top of that, he was diagnosed with dyslexia in kindergarten, which meant he had to sit through special reading classes while other kids sailed through their lessons without a second thought. But here is the thing about James Van Der Beek that defined him for the rest of his life. He never let a setback be the end of the road. He pushed through the dyslexia, worked harder than anyone expected him to, and became an honor student. He proved, first to himself and then to the rest of the world, that the obstacles in front of you do not determine the destination ahead of you. As a kid, his heart was set on athletics. He was a serious football player. But at just 13 years old, a concussion sidelined him for an entire year and effectively closed that door. For a lot of kids, that would have been a breaking point. Instead, James turned to theater. And the moment he stepped onto a stage for the first time, something clicked into place. Acting became his outlet, his safe space, his way of exploring emotions and identities he was too reserved to express in his everyday life. He did not waste any time with it. At 15, he convinced his mother to drive him to New York City to find an agent. Not to sightsee, not to catch a Broadway show, to start building a career. By 16, he had landed his professional debut in Edward Albee's off-Broadway production of Finding the Sun. By 17, he was performing in the musical Shenandoah at the prestigious Goodspeed Opera House. He eventually enrolled at Drew University in New Jersey on an academic scholarship, majoring in English. But by early 1997, at just 20 years old, the pull of Hollywood had become impossible to ignore. He auditioned for 3 different television pilots, and one of those scripts would change the entire course of his life. That script was for a little show called Dawson's Creek. Now here is the part of the story that most people do not know. When James first read the character description for Dawson Leary, it said the character was 15 years old. James was 20. He literally set the script aside, placed it at the bottom of the pile, figured it wasn't for him. Something pulled him back to it. During the audition, producers told him he sounded too mature, so he pitched his voice higher. When they found out his real age, instead of sending him home, they leaned in. Creator Kevin Williamson reportedly declared, "I created this guy. I know this guy. This kid is this guy." Dawson's Creek premiered on January 20th, 1998. Within weeks, James Beek went from a college dropout from a small Connecticut town to one of the most recognized young actors on the planet. The show ran for 6 seasons and 128 episodes. It turned its entire cast into household names and defined a generation of American television. James later reflected on that experience with a kind of disbelief that never quite faded, saying he got stupidly lucky and found himself in the middle of a genuine cultural phenomenon. During summer hiatuses, he starred in Varsity Blues in 1999 and won the MTV Movie Award for Best Breakthrough Male. He took on edgier roles like The Rules of Attraction in 2002, which he described as an exorcism from his nice guy image. And years later, he leaned brilliantly into self-parody with Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23, playing a fictionalized version of himself in a way that proved he had far more depth and comedic range than anyone had given him credit for. But through all of it, through the fame and the awards and the whirlwind of a Hollywood career, James always said the thing that mattered most to him had nothing to do with cameras or scripts. It was his family. And it was that family that would carry him through the darkest chapter of his life. The silent war nobody knew about. For more than a year after his diagnosis, James Beek kept it entirely private. Just him and Kimberly. No publicists. No People magazine spreads. No Instagram posts. He managed it the way he described it, as a full-time job. Doctor appointments, insurance battles, tracking results, navigating treatments, and trying to hold everything together for a wife and 6 children, the oldest of whom was just 13 at the time. He only went public in November 2024 through an exclusive with People magazine. And the reason he did it when he did was not entirely by choice. A tabloid had gotten wind of the story and was about to run it. James made a decision. If this story is going to get told, I'm going to tell it myself. On my terms. In my words. And from that moment forward, every interview, every public appearance, every conversation he had with the media carried the same message. Clear. Unwavering. Urgent. Get tested. Talk to your doctor. Do not wait for symptoms. He had gone through surgery. He had gone through chemotherapy. He was managing the whole thing on that ranch in Texas, trying to be present for his kids every single day, even on the days when the treatments had scraped him down to nothing. And through every single step of it, Kimberly was right there beside him. He said once, simply and completely, "I don't get through this without her." Those words carry a different weight now. The truth that changes everything. Now here is where we get to the part that has oncologists, cancer researchers, and public health experts across the country using James Beek's name in a way that goes far beyond celebrity obituaries. Because his death is not just the loss of a beloved actor. It is a data point in an epidemic that is quietly accelerating, and most Americans have no idea it's coming for them. According to the American Cancer Society's January 2026 update, colorectal cancer is now the #1 cause of cancer death in men under 50 in the United States. It is the second leading cause in women under 50. This is a disease that every generation before us understood as something older people got, something your grandparents worried about, something you deal with when you turn 65 and your doctor finally got around to scheduling that colonoscopy. But the data is now completely undeniable. A study published in JAMA in January 2026 confirmed that colorectal cancer has become the leading cancer killer in Americans under 50. The American Cancer Society reports that diagnoses in people under 55 have jumped from 11% of all cases in 1995 to 20% by 2019. And the numbers continue to climb at a rate of 1 to 3% every single year. In 2026 alone, approximately 108,000 new colon cancer diagnoses are expected in the United States, with roughly 55,000 deaths projected. James Beek was in peak cardiovascular shape when he was diagnosed. He was doing cold plunges every morning. He was biohacking. He had no family history that sent up red flags. And he had stage 3 cancer growing inside of him without a single obvious clue. When colorectal cancer is caught early, the survival rate is 91%. 91%. But here is the brutal reality. 2/3 of cases are not caught early. When it is found in later stages, that survival rate drops to just 16%. That gap between 91% and 16% is the difference that a single colonoscopy can make. That is the difference between watching your kids graduate high school and not being there to see it. So why is this happening? Why are healthy, active people in their 30s and 40s, and in some cases their 20s and even their teens, being diagnosed with a disease that used to belong to a different generation entirely? Experts do not have one clean, definitive answer. But the picture that is emerging points to a convergence of modern life factors. Diets dominated by ultra-processed foods, sugar-sweetened beverages, sedentary lifestyles, environmental exposures we do not fully understand yet. A groundbreaking April 2025 study identified a bacteria called Colobactin, found at significantly higher levels in modern guts than in previous generations, as a likely driver of early-onset colorectal cancer cases. The changes to our gut microbiome over the past several decades, driven largely by what we eat and the environments we live in, may be laying the foundation for a cancer epidemic that is just beginning to make itself fully known. And the symptoms? That is the cruelest part of all this. Small changes in bowel habits, a little fatigue that you blame on your schedule, mild abdominal discomfort that could be 100 different things. Occasionally, blood in the stool that you chalk up to hemorrhoids, weight loss that you write off as stress. These are not the kinds of symptoms that make you pick up the phone and call your doctor. They are the kinds of symptoms you explain away, over and over again, until it is too late to explain anything. That is exactly what James Van Der Beek did. And that is exactly what millions of Americans are doing right now, at this very moment, while this disease quietly progresses inside of them. The advocacy that will outlive him. After going public with his diagnosis, James Van Der Beek did not retreat into privacy and spend his remaining time guarding himself from the world. He did the opposite. He turned his fight into a mission. He participated in the Real Full Monty, a charity special designed to raise awareness around early cancer detection. He partnered with Garden Health to promote the Shield blood test, a simple blood draw that can detect colorectal cancer without the invasiveness of a traditional colonoscopy, lowering the barrier for early detection in people who have been putting it off. He showed up to interviews when he could have stayed home. He spoke openly about fear, about faith, about what it actually feels like to stare down a stage 3 diagnosis with 6 kids watching you. In September 2025, the cast of Dawson's Creek reunited at the Richard Rodgers Theater in New York City for a live reading of the show's pilot episode, a charity event raising funds for FC Cancer, an organization dedicated to advancing health equity through early detection. James had been looking forward to it for months, but at the last minute, back-to-back stomach viruses left him too sick to attend. Instead, he sent a video message. Knowing what we know now, watching it is almost unbearable. His voice was full of longing. He said he couldn't believe he wasn't there. He couldn't believe he didn't get to hug his castmates in person. Kimberly and the children went in his place and joined the cast on stage. And when the entire theater came together to sing the Dawson's Creek theme song, Paula Cole's I Don't Want to Wait, you could feel decades of love and memory pouring through every single note. Less than 5 months later, it was over. In December 2025, just 2 months before his death, James Van Der Beek sat down for what would turn out to be his last televised interview on NBC's Today Show with Craig Melvin. He said he was feeling much better than he had been months before. He spoke about patience and discipline and a kind of inner strength he said he never knew he had. He spoke about his family, about his kids, about what it had been like to go through something this enormous with Kimberly by his side. And then he said something that, looking back now, feels almost prophetic. He called the cancer diagnosis the best thing that had ever happened to him. That might sound like the kind of thing someone says because they are trying to stay positive. But James Van Der Beek was not the kind of man who performed optimism for the cameras. What he was saying went much deeper than that. He was saying that the diagnosis had given him a clarity he had never possessed before. That it had stripped away everything that didn't truly matter and left only what did. He talked about how it had sparked a journey of self-love. About arriving, for the first time in his adult life, at the genuine belief that he was worthy of love. His own love. God's love. He said cancer had given him presence. The ability to slow down and actually inhabit each moment instead of racing through life, trying to accomplish whatever was on the invisible checklist that a scared 20-year-old version of himself had written decades ago. He talked about experiencing the death of caring about being an actor the way he had in his 20s. And in its place, he said he had fallen back in love with storytelling, with being creative, with being a human being who was trying to live authentically in whatever time he had left. And at the center of all of it were his children. Olivia, 15, Joshua, 13, Annabelle, 12, Amelia, 9, Gwendolyn, 7, and little Jeremiah, just 4 years old. They were his reason for getting up every single morning, even on the mornings when the treatments had left him completely hollowed out. He said he watched them respond to what was happening with a resilience and maturity that humbled him. Every kiss, every hug, every time they asked if they could make him tea or bring him water. On February 11th, 2026, James Van Der Beek passed away peacefully at his home. He was 48 years old. Kimberly announced the news on Instagram, writing that their beloved James David Van Der Beek had passed peacefully that morning, and that he had met his final days with courage, faith, and grace. She asked for privacy as the family grieved. The tributes came flooding in within hours. Busy Phillips wrote that her heart was deeply hurting, that James was one in a billion, and that he would be forever missed. Kristen Ritter called him a beautiful human being inside and out, smart, funny, and kind. Katie Holmes penned a handwritten tribute praising his bravery, his compassion, his selflessness, and his strength. Sarah Michelle Gellar said she had grown up alongside him, and that his loss was a true one. His on-screen mother from Dawson's Creek, Mary Margaret Humes, called him her gracious warrior. And then came the moment that revealed just how devastating the financial reality of fighting cancer can be, even for someone the world knew by name. Friends launched a GoFundMe to help Kimberly and the 6 children cover the mountain of medical debt left behind. The costs of James's treatment had depleted the family's funds. They were fighting to stay in their home, fighting to keep their children in school. In under 24 hours, over $1 million was raised. People from all over the world opened their hearts for a man who had spent his final years opening his heart to them. That is the legacy of James Beek. Not Dawson Leary. Not Mox from Varsity Blues. Not the crying meme that the internet turned into a running joke. The real legacy is a man who took the worst thing that can happen to a person and used it to try to save the lives of strangers he would never meet. A man who looked at a stage 3 cancer diagnosis and said, with complete, unshakable conviction, that it was going to teach him how to truly live. This is either going to take me out of the body, or it's going to teach me how to truly live in it. In the end, it did both. And the message he left behind is one that every single person watching this needs to hear. If you are 45 or older, talk to your doctor about colorectal cancer screening today. Not next month. Today. Do not wait for symptoms. Do not assume that because you feel healthy, you are healthy. James Beek felt healthy. He was in the best shape of his life. And he had stage 3 cancer growing inside of him without a single clue. Do not let his death be just a sad story you watched on a screen. Let it be the moment you made the phone call that saved your life.